Welcome, dear listeners, to The Shadow Behind You, the channel where the forgotten whispers of the past claw their way back into the light, or, perhaps, drag you into the darkness. I'm your host, the one who lingers in the corners of history's forgotten rooms, unearthing the tales that time itself tried to bury. Tonight, we venture into the steamy heart of Louisiana, 1880, a year when the wounds of war still festered like open sores on the land, and the Bayous held secrets deeper than the graves they concealed. Imagine it with me, the air thick with humidity, heavy as a shroud, clinging to your skin like the grasp of unseen hands. Cypress trees draped in Spanish moss, swaying like spectral veils in the wind, their roots twisting into the murky waters below. Plantations rise from the mist like decaying monuments, their once grand columns cracked and overgrown, echoing with the ghosts of chains long broken, but never truly silenced. This is the Louisiana of Reconstruction's bitter end, where freedom was a fragile promise and the old ways of power and subjugation morphed into something even more insidious. Sharecropping bound the freed to the soil they once toiled under whip, and in the shadows, ancient practices from distant shores whispered promises of retribution. Our story tonight centers on two brothers, Etienne and Armand Duval, whose names have faded from the annals of history, much like the ink on crumbling ledgers in abandoned attics. Born into wealth forged from the blood of enslaved souls, they inherited Whispering Oaks Plantation, a sprawling estate on the fringes of the Atchafalaya Basin. But what they truly inherited was a curse, a secret so vile that it bound them in life and pursued them beyond death. They took it to their graves, or so the whispers say. But graves, my friends, are poor keepers of secrets. They leak like sieve-bottomed boats in the swamp, seeping horrors into the world above. Picture the brothers Etienne, the elder, tall and gaunt, with eyes like polished obsidian, cold, calculating, always scheming to reclaim the family's lost glory after the Civil War stripped away their human chattel. Armand, younger and more volatile, his face marked by a scar from a childhood accident, his temper as unpredictable as a summer storm. They were inseparable, bound by blood and something darker, a shared knowledge that festered between them like rot in the humid air. It began innocently enough, or so it seemed. In the spring of 1880, as the cotton fields bloomed white under a relentless sun, strange occurrences plagued Whispering Oaks. Workers, former slaves now tied to the land through debt and desperation, spoke of shadows moving in the old slave quarters at night. Flickering lights, like willow, the wisps, danced over the graves in the family cemetery. And then the dreams came, vivid, tormenting visions that afflicted not just the laborers, but the brothers themselves. Dreams of chains rattling in empty rooms, of voices chanting in tongues forgotten by time. But what was the secret? That's the hook that draws you in, isn't it? The one that makes your skin prickle as you listen in the dark. Rumors swirled even then. Had the brothers unearthed something forbidden in the depths of the plantation? A hidden ritual site, perhaps, where voodoo practitioners, descendants of those brought in chains from West Africa and Haiti, had woven spells of protection and revenge. Or was it something more personal, a familial sin so heinous that it poisoned the very ground? Whispers in nearby towns spoke of disappearances, of bodies vanishing into the bayou, never to resurface, and always the brothers at the center, smiling politely by day, but locking themselves away by night, their faces pale as if drained by some invisible leech. As we delve deeper, you'll feel the chill creep in, the way the air grows heavier, the sounds of the night amplifying in your mind. This isn't just a story. It's a descent into the abyss of human depravity, where the line between the living and the dead blurs like fog over water. What did Etienne and Armand do that damned their souls? And why, even now, do travelers report hearing their anguished whispers on moonless nights near Whispering Oaks ruins? Stay with me, listeners. Turn off the lights if you dare, for in the shadows behind you, the Duval brothers are waiting to share their secrets at last. Let us step back now into the world of 1880 Louisiana, where the Duval brothers' tale truly begins to unfold. The year was one of uneasy transition. The Civil War had ended 15 years prior, but its scars ran deep, like the roots of ancient oaks burrowing into the fertile delta soil. Reconstruction's promises had withered under political machinations, and by 1880, the South was reclaiming its old hierarchies in new guises. Jim Crow laws loomed on the horizon, and in places like Whispering Oaks, the air still hummed with the echoes of auction blocks and overseers' whips. Etienne Duval was 38 that fateful year, Armand 34. Their father, Henry Duval, had been a ruthless planter before the war, amassing wealth through sugar cane and cotton, harvested by hundreds of enslaved men, women, and children. Henry died in 1867, broken by defeat and the emancipation that stripped him of his property. The brothers inherited a diminished estate, fields overgrown, the big house sagging under neglect, and a workforce of freed blacks who now demanded wages or shares, though often they received neither without coercion. Etienne, ever the pragmatist, rebuilt through sheer will. He was a man of ledgers and contracts, his thin frame always clad in starched linen suits that seemed ill-suited to the sweltering heat. His voice was soft, almost serpentine, coaxing deals from reluctant neighbors. Armand, by contrast, was the enforcer, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands from years of riding the fields. His scar, a jagged line from brow to cheek, came from a fall during a hunt as a boy, but locals whispered it was a mark from something supernatural, a warning he ignored. The plantation sprawled over 2,000 acres, bordered by the sluggish waters of the bayou. Cypress groves dotted the landscape, their knees protruding from the muck like bony fingers. The big house stood proud on a slight rise, its verandas wrapped in wrought iron lace, but inside, rooms gathered dust, and portraits of ancestors stared down with judgmental eyes. Beyond lay the old slave quarters, ramshackle cabins of weathered wood, now housing sharecroppers. And further still, the family's cemetery, moss-covered stones tilting in the soft earth, marking generations of Duvals, and, in an unmarked corner, the hurried graves of those who toiled for them. It was in March of 1880 that the first omens appeared. A sharecropper named Josiah, an elderly man whose family had been on the land for generations, vanished one night. His cabin was found empty, bed unmade, a single candle guttered out on the floor. The brothers dismissed it, run off to the city, Etienne said with a shrug, but whispers spread. Josiah had been seen arguing with Armand days before over unpaid shares, and then the animals began to die. Chickens found with necks twisted, cows bloating in the fields, their eyes glassy and fixed on nothing. Etienne and Armand rode out at dawn to investigate, the mist curling around their horses' hooves like living smoke. The air smelled of decay, sweet and cloying, mingled with the sharp tang of impending rain. As they neared the old quarters, a sound pierced the silence, a low chant, rhythmic and foreign, rising from the trees. Armand drew his pistol, his scar twitching. "Who's there?" he bellowed, voice echoing unnaturally. They found nothing, or so they claimed. But that night, in the big house, the brothers sat by the fire, whiskey glasses trembling in their hands. "It was her voice," Armand muttered, staring into the flames. Mama's voice from the grave. Their mother, Elise Duval, had died in 1860, supposedly of fever, but rumors persisted of poison, administered by a voodoo practitioner among the slaves in revenge for Henry's cruelties. Days turned to weeks and the disturbances escalated. Doors slammed in empty hallways. Footsteps creaked on the stairs at midnight, ascending but never descending. One maid, a young woman named Leela, swore she saw a figure in the mirror. A woman in tattered rags, her eyes glowing like embers. Leela fled the next day, leaving behind a grist bag, a small pouch of herbs, bones, and charms, tied with red string. Intrigued, or perhaps compelled, Etienne began to explore the plantation's hidden corners. He pored over old journals in the attic, dust motes dancing in slants of light like restless spirits. There, he uncovered entries from his grandfather's time, tales of a voodoo queen named Mama Zora, enslaved on the plantation in the 1820s. She had cursed the Duvals after her daughter was sold away, vowing that the family's sins would return threefold. "The blood of the innocent will rise from the earth," she had proclaimed before her execution, hanged from a cypress tree that still stood, gnarled and ominous. Armand, skeptical at first, joined his brother in secret excavations. Under the cover of night, lanterns flickering like fireflies, they dug in the old quarters. What they found chilled them to the bone: an underground chamber, walls etched with symbols, crosses, serpents, V's drawn in chalk and blood. At its center, an altar of bones and feathers, and a locked chest bound in iron. As they pried it open, a wind howled through the chamber, extinguishing their lights. In the darkness, they heard laughter, cold, mocking, echoing from the walls. When light returned, the chest held relics: a dagger stained with rust, tear, or blood, a book of incantations in faded French Creole, and a locket containing a lock of hair, inscribed with the name, Elise. The brothers sealed the chamber, swearing secrecy. But the damage was done. That night, dreams assailed them, visions of their mother writhing in agony, her skin bubbling from poison, of slaves rising from graves, chains dragging through mud, and always Mama Zora's face, wrinkled and fierce, chanting words that burned into their souls. Tension built like storm clouds. Workers abandoned fields. Crops withered untended. The brothers grew paranoid, accusing each other of betrayal. "You want the power for yourself," Armand snarled one evening, fist clenched. Etienne's eyes narrowed. "Power. This is a curse, brother, and it's coming for us." Little did they know, the true horror was just beginning. The secrets they unearthed were not relics of the past. They were alive, hungry, waiting to consume. As the summer of 1880 sweltered on, the Duval brothers found themselves ensnared in a web of their own making, or perhaps one spun long before their birth. The discovery of the underground chamber had awakened something primordial, a force that seeped into every crevice of Whispering Oaks like the relentless creep of kudzu over forgotten ruins. The bayou, once a mere backdrop, now seemed complicit. Its waters murmured secrets at dusk, and alligators' eyes gleamed like accusatory stars in the night. Etienne, ever the intellectual, delved into the forbidden book from the chest. Its pages, brittle as dried leaves, detailed rituals brought from Dahomey and Haiti, spells for protection, for love, for vengeance. He read by candlelight in the study, the flame casting elongated shadows that danced mockingly on the walls. "This could save us," he whispered to Armand one stormy evening, thunder rumbling like the growl of an ancient beast. "Or control it." Armand, fueled by fear and whiskey, disagreed. "Burn it," he urged, his scar pulsing red in the firelight. "Mama Zora's curse is in those words. It's what killed Mother." But curiosity, or greed, won out. The brothers experimented in secret, reciting incantations under the full moon. At first, small miracles: a blighted field bloomed overnight, yields doubling. Workers returned drawn by whispers of prosperity. But prosperity came at a price. The hauntings intensified. One night, as rain lashed the windows like spectral fingers, a sharecropper named Elias burst into the big house, eyes wild. "They're rising," he gasped, collapsing in a heap. From the graves, hands breaking through the dirt. The brothers dismissed him as fevered, but the next morning, the cemetery soil was disturbed, mounds upheaved as if by burrowing creatures. Finger marks clawed the earth. Panic gripped the plantation. Leela's replacement, a woman versed in hoodoo named Seraphine, warned them. "You've stirred the low," she said, her voice a husky murmur, eyes gleaming with forbidden knowledge. "Spirits of the ancestors, they demand payment." Seraphine, descendant of enslaved Haitians, knew the signs, the vives appearing etched in frost on windows, despite the heat, the scent of grave dirt in clean rooms, dreams shared by all, of chains and whips. Etienne, obsessed, sought Seraphine's guidance. In hidden meetings by the bayou, she taught him rituals, offerings of rum and tobacco, dances to invoke protection. But Armand grew jealous, suspecting betrayal. "She's poisoning you, like they did Mother," he accused. One fateful night, fueled by rage, Armand confronted them. He found Etienne and Seraphine in the chamber, candles circling an altar, their bodies swaying to rhythmic drums only they could hear. What happened next sealed their doom. In a blur of violence, Armand lunged, dagger from the chest in hand. Seraphine fell first, her blood spilling onto the symbols, activating something unholy. Etienne, horrified, fought his brother. "What have you done?" he cried as the chamber shook, dirt sifting from the ceiling. Armand, panting, stabbed again, this time at shadows that leaped from the walls. They dragged Seraphine's body to the bayou, weighing it with stones. But as it sank, bubbles rose, forming faces. Agonized, screaming, the brothers fled, vowing silence, yet the curse amplified. Visions plagued them. Seraphine rising from the water, dripping mud, her eyes accusatory. Workers reported seeing the brothers arguing with thin air, their faces contorted in terror. By autumn, isolation consumed them. The plantation decayed, vines choked the big house, windows shattered by unseen forces. Etienne, gaunt and feverish, scribbled in journals. The secrets multiply. Mother's death was no accident. Father poisoned her for infidelity, with help from Zora's kin. We bear the stain. Armand, descending into madness, patrolled with shotgun, shooting at phantoms. The climax came on All Hallows' Eve. A storm raged, lightning illuminating the bayou like divine wrath. The brothers barricaded in the study, but doors burst open. Spirits manifested, shadowy figures in rags, chains clanking. Mama Zora led them, her noose, marked neck twisted. "Your blood for ours," she intoned. In desperation, they confessed to each other. Etienne admitted using voodoo to kill a rival planter years before. Armand revealed burying evidence of father's crimes, bodies of rebels hidden in the swamp. But it was too late. The spirits dragged Armand screaming into the night. Etienne alone sealed himself in the chamber, dagger in hand. Dawn brought silence. Bodies were found, Armand in the bayou, throat slit, Etienne in the chamber, self-inflicted wound. No note, only blood, smeared walls with one word: forgive. The plantation burned days later, flames seen for miles, secrets buried. Or were they? To fully grasp the chilling depths of the Duval brothers' tale, we must peel back the layers of history that cloak Louisiana like the moss on its ancient trees. This is no mere backdrop. It's the fertile soil from which such horrors sprout. In 1880, Louisiana was a cauldron of transformation and turmoil, where the ghosts of slavery mingled with emerging freedoms and ancient beliefs clashed with modern ambitions. Let us explore this era, blending fact with the folklore that makes it so eerily authentic. Post-Civil War Louisiana emerged scarred from the conflict. The war ended in 1865, but Reconstruction 1865-1877 attempted to rebuild. Freed slaves gained rights, black politicians rose, and federal troops enforced change. Yet by 1880, Reconstruction had collapsed under Redeemer, Democrats, white supremacists reclaiming power through violence and fraud. The Compromise of 1877 withdrew troops, ushering in Jim Crow. Lynchings surged. The Knights of the White Camellia and Ku Klux Klan terrorized. Plantations like Whispering Oaks transitioned to sharecropping, a system trapping blacks in debt, peonage, echoes of slavery without chains. Economically, sugar and cotton reigned, but floods and boll weevils plagued. The Atchafalaya Basin, vast and untamed, was a labyrinth of swamps, home to Acadians, Ice-Cajuns, Creoles, and freedmen. Here isolation bred legends, Rougarou werewolf-like beasts, few follets, swamp lights luring victims. But voodoo, properly Vodou or hoodoo in Louisiana, was the beating heart of the supernatural. Voodoo arrived with enslaved West Africans in the 1700s, evolving through Haitian influences post-1791 revolution. In New Orleans, Marie Laveau's 1801-1881s became legendary. A free woman of color, hairdresser by day, voodoo queen by night. She held rituals in Congo Square, blending Catholicism with African spirits aglow. Snakes, drums, possessions, her power intimidated whites. She died in 1881, but in 1880, her influence lingered, inspiring practitioners like our fictional Seraphine. Plantations were voodoo hotbeds. Slaves used it for resistance. Gris for protection, root work for healing or harm. Evidence abounds. Archaeologists found voodoo artifacts in cabins at sites like Magnolia and Whitney plantations. Whitney, opened as a museum, reveals slave life cabins, hospitals where experiments occurred, graves unmarked, ghosts. Visitors report cries, apparitions. Magnolia's fields, where slaves died from overwork, echo with whispers, voodoo dolls unearthed. Folklore amplifies. The Myrtles plantation, built 1796, hosts ghosts like Chloe, a slave hanged for poisoning. Her spirit roams, mirroring Duval curses. Manchic Swamps, Julia Brown D. 1915, but legends predate cursed her town. Hurricane struck her funeral day, killing hundreds. Bodies float in swamps undead. Cultural trauma fueled these tales. Slavery's aftermath, families torn, bodies discarded in Bayes. Post-1880, the Great Migration saw blacks flee, but many stayed, weaving voodoo into survival. Catholicism syncretized. Saint expedites for quick justice, mirroring Low like Baron Samedi, Death's guardian. In this context, the Duvals embody white anxiety, inheriting tainted wealth, fearing retribution. Voodoo wasn't evil. It empowered the oppressed. Real secrets, hidden graves from uprisings like the 1811 German Coast Revolt, largest slave rebellion, bodies dumped, secrets buried. Eerie authenticity arises from this blend. Fact, plantations, Horus meets folklore, a curse is manifesting. In 1880, as railroads pierced swamps, modernity clashed with ancient ways, birthing tales that unsettle because they ring true. The past doesn't die, it haunts. Now, as the fog of narrative clears, let us descend into the psychological and symbolic undercurrents of the Duval brothers saga. This isn't mere ghost story. It's a mirror to humanity's darkest facets, reflecting universal fears through Louisiana's haunted lens. With an ominous gaze, we'll dissect how this tale connects to cultural trauma, the inheritance of sin, and the supernatural as metaphor for the repressed. Symbolically, the underground chamber represents buried truths, literal and figurative. In psychoanalysis, Freud's uncanny arises when the familiar turns strange. Here, the plantation, once home, becomes alien through unearthed secrets. The brothers' discovery unearths familial guilt. Mother's poisoning echoes slavery's poisons, literal's arsenic in food, and metaphorical oppression's toxin. The chest's relics, dagger, book, locket, symbolize inherited violence, knowledge, and loss. Blood spilling activates the curse, suggesting sins demand blood atonement, a nod to biblical and voodoo themes. Thematically, inherited trauma dominates. Post-slavery Louisiana embodied sins of the fathers. Whites like Duvals profited from ancestors' atrocities, yet denied accountability. Armand and Etienne's paranoia mirrors white fear during Reconstruction's end. Dread of uprising. The rising, graves symbolizing repressed history erupting. Voodoo, as resistance tool, embodies the subaltern's voice. Seraphine's death silences it, but spirits amplify, showing oppression's futility. Universal fears, the unknown terrifies. Bayes, with hidden depths, parallel the subconscious. Jung's shadow self, the dark aspects we suppress. The brothers bond phrase under pressure, exploring fraternal betrayal, akin to Cain and Abel. Hauntings manifest guilt projections of psyche. As in Gothic literature, Poe's Fall of the House of Usher, siblings doomed by inheritance. Cultural trauma, slavery's legacy as collective wound. Hortense Spiller's American Grammar book discusses black bodies as commodified. Here, spirits reclaim agency. Voodoo, often demonized, represents cultural resilience, misunderstood by whites leading to violence. The tale critiques human nature's greed. Etienne's power quest. Armand's rage show how fear breeds atrocity. Psychologically, madness descends, isolation, hallucinations suggest PTSD from cultural sins. The storm's climax, nature's wrath, evokes eco-Gothic, land rebelling against exploitation. Ominously, this connects to today. Unaddressed histories haunt societies. Like ghosts, they linger until acknowledged. The Duvals' secrets warn bury the past, and it buries you. As our journey through the shadows of whispering oaks draws to a close, the chill lingers, doesn't it? The Duval brothers, Etienne and Armand, lie in their graves, the earth heavy upon them, but their secrets, they stir still, like restless currents in the bayou. In 1880 Louisiana, they unearthed a curse born of blood and betrayal, a voodoo vengeance that consumed their souls. Murder, madness, manifestations. The tale weaves a tapestry of terror, reminding us that some sins are too grave to stay buried. Yet questions haunt. What if the chamber remains hidden beneath ruins? Do travelers hear their pleas on windy nights? Or is the true horror our own shadows, the ones we cast by ignoring history's whispers? Dear listeners, as you turn away, remember, the shadow behind you might be your own. Sleep well, if you can.